and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm super excited to share with you a free budget template, and I'll be using my own personal budget to demo its features. Just a bit of background, I am using a sort of modified budget by paycheck method made popular by the YouTuber The Budget Mom. Now, when I first got into personal finance and budgeting a few months ago, a lot of my friends and popular budget gurus were using written budgets. And while their budgets look absolutely amazing and I've learned so much about budgeting from them, I haven't really used writing as a form of documentation since graduating high school. This budget template was made on Google Sheets, which makes it super easy to take your budget with you on the go. It's right there in your phone. And my favorite thing about using Sheets as a budget tool is the fact that it's super affordable and it's also easily accessible. Again, I'm sharing this template with you absolutely free of charge, so please be sure to check out the description bar below for the link and like this video if you want to see more finance and budgeting tips from me. And consider subscribing. Now enough of all that, let's see this budget in action. All right, y'all, so this is my real budget for my previous pay period. So if you see on the budget template, we have 3 sections: the actual versus projected, the spending tracker, and then my favorite one at the bottom is the sinking funds. So starting with the actual and projected portion, this is where you want to kind of lay out your budget. This is the actual budgeting part of the spreadsheet. So at the top, you have your income sources. Traditionally, most people will have a paycheck, but something that I also like to include are leftover cash from my previous pay period. So if you see here, I last got paid on the 15th and I had about $273.85 left over. That probably came from underspending in some of my spending categories. And then I had a decent amount of Amazon returns. When it comes to things like returning items, or let's say you're covering cost up front for a shared purchase and people are reimbursing you later, I like to include that here just so that I'm tracking the influx and outflow of funds out of my account. And that's what really helps me keep my budget on track. Going down to our spending categories, I list out my bills within that particular pay period. As you can see, I have an Adobe subscription. That's how I make and edit cool videos for you guys. I do have a spiritual donation. We call it tithing at my church. I do have a Patreon subscription. I budget for groceries. Spending, this is kind of a catch-all category for any kind of unexpected expenses. Or let's say I'm browsing in the mall. Don't we all miss the mall? And I see something that I like. I give myself a little bit of money every pay period to just kind of buy things that I'm into. This category is typically the one that I underspend in. As you can see, I only spent $90.45 of my $115 budget allocation. So these are the instances where I'll have a little bit of cash left over. Eating out is a category that I also have. This is something, as you can see, I am struggling to rein it in. Oftentimes when you're budgeting, a lot of it is about being honest with yourself. Maybe you eat out way more than you cook and you need to have that reflected in your budget. For me, I definitely will increase my eating out budget for the next pay period, but I'm not going to get too crazy because I'm really trying to be more health conscious, and you can really ensure that you're getting good nutrients when you cook everything yourself. But I'm definitely probably looking to bump this up to $75 or so, just to give myself a little bit more wiggle room. Hair is another category that I have. Typically, my hair budget is not this high. I had a couple of things that I knew that I wanted to purchase. I bought a wig, y'all. So I knew I wanted to purchase a wig, and I was also due for maintenance on my natural hair. So I try to get a trim about every 2 to 3 months. So it was time to get that done. I still ended up underspending. So I had about $36.40 left over in that category. And then my favorite spending category lately has been the sinking funds, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But as you can see, I contributed about $273 to that, and that happens to match the leftover funds from my previous pay period. So sometimes in my budget, I'll have like a designated amount that I contribute to my sinking funds, but a lot of times if I have leftover funds from the previous budget, I'll just go ahead and allocate those to my sinking funds. Last thing that I wanted to kind of touch on is my car payment. Right now in my financial journey, I'm really looking to reduce my debt. I've gotten everything done with the student loans. So my next and my last thing is my car payment. I'm looking to be done paying that off in August. So as you can see, I have a huge $1,500 payment, and your budget should reflect your financial goals. So for me, my goal is to pay off my car this year. And as you can see, out of all of my spending categories, car payment does have the highest. And then another thing I wanted to highlight is this air fryer purchase. Not to brag because I got an air fryer. It is amazing, by the way. You should definitely look into getting one. But I wanted to highlight this because this is how budgeting has saved me. A lot of times we can do impulse purchases, but something that I'm working on and I've learned through discipline and just really putting this into practice is if there's something that I know I want, I don't have to buy it immediately. I can think on it, and that helps me make sure that it's something that I actually want, and then I just make room for it in my budget. So I mentioned earlier, I knew I wanted a wig. I knew I wanted a wig about 3 months ago, but this was the perfect time in my budget that I can squeeze in that, and I was also able to get an air fryer, which I actually got for about $19.85 under budget. Don't you love a sale? Another thing that I would like to highlight is this section down here. This is super important for when you are closing out your budget. So in the first column, this is where your projecteds are. So I do like to have a zero-based budget. So what I do here is I make sure that this is as close to zero as possible. I do have conditional formatting set in this tab, so anything over 99 cents will turn this font red. Anything red on the budget is a bad thing. As you can see, I overspent here. So this lets me know, hey, you have at least $1 that you need to allocate. The zero-based budget method says every dollar should have a purpose. I don't really trip off change too much, but again, anything that's $1 or more, I want to make sure that I have a job for it. Here is where this is kind of like the balance that I have using my spending tracker anticipated that I will have in my bank account. And then the actual remaining is when I'm closing out my budget and I pay off my credit card balance and I'm kind of closing out everything. This is the actual difference. The goal is to get these two numbers to match. You want what you tracked for spending to match what you actually spent. This month I did a really good job and I only had a 20 cents difference. But let me tell you, to get down to this 20 cents difference was definitely a journey. Sometimes I would be off by $60. When I first started budgeting, y'all, I was off by thousands of dollars sometimes. So definitely as I've gotten more discipline and gotten more practice, I have been able to get this number down. The goal is zero. So we'll check back in a couple of pay periods and see if I've been able to get a zero difference. Going to the next section is the spending tracker. This is one of my favorite things about this budget because all of the purchases within the spending category are auto-summed here. So most of these values here were calculated by adding everything in the similar spending category. So for example, this $133.26 is the sum of every grocery purchase. This makes this super easy and instant. If you were doing a written budget, this is where you would bring out the calculator and start calculating things. What I love about having my budget on sheets is that I don't have to worry about doing that. So when we're using our spending tracker so that all of our transactions within the same spending category are auto-summed, I have built in some if functions. But for things like groceries is where you'll see it. So if you want to change this sum if function to match your particular spending category, you'll just label it whatever you want that designated name to be within this kind of green arrow. And you have to make sure, in order for the formula to work, that whatever the name of the spending category that you establish in the sum of function is the spending category that you are using in the spending tracker. So if this didn't say groceries and it just said grocery, you'll see that that balance will not be included. So it's just a little thing for you to kind of keep track of. In the budget template that I provided, I have included little comments that kind of give you little reminders where everything goes. Let me put this back so it works. And as you can see, the balance is added back. But the only way to make sure that your budget is as accurate as possible is to revisit it often. I try to come to my budget every day, if not at least every 2 days. Because how often are we spending? Every time you purchase something, you should be coming back to your budget to make sure you're recording it on your spending tracker. So if we look a bit deeper into this, we'll see that on the day that I got paid, I went ahead and paid most of my bills. So I paid tithes. I really wanted this wig, y'all. This was the second thing I bought, was the wig. There's this hair oil that I really like. I'm trying to kind of grow my hair out. And then look, the air fryer was high up on the list as well. And then you'll see a lot of my eating out. Horrible. We have to do better. And what I also love about the spending tracker is the description column. I am working to be like more descriptive in here. So for example, you'll see this $6.35 purchase from Amazon. What was it though? What did I buy? I have no clue. So I want to like get better with making sure that I'm actually being descriptive, so that when I'm looking over my planning for my next pay period, I can look through my purchases and say, hey, maybe I need a little bit more money in this spending category. I wanted to highlight this June 7th purchase from Pizza Hut. I did not purchase $30 worth of pizza for myself. This is something that I mentioned earlier about including in your income source for your actual versus projected. So it was actually me and 2 other friends who split this purchase. So if you can see here in my projected, I only anticipated having $273, but I actually had $293, and 20 of those dollars accounted for them reimbursing me $10 a piece for this pizza purchase. And here you can see the transaction for my hair appointment. A lot of eating out here, guys. This is bad. Don't be like me. But again, even if I'm not a fan of the purchase, I track it so that I can go back and revisit it when I'm planning for the next pay period. Maybe I need to be honest with myself. Girl, you're really not in the mood to cook. So it's time to bring that grocery budget down and increase the eating out budget. And now it's time to go to my absolute favorite part of the budget, the sinking funds. For those of you who don't know what sinking funds are, they're like kind of mini savings accounts with a purpose. Now, you don't have to take every individual sinking fund and give it its own bank account. What I do is I do have a separate savings account for my sinking funds, and then it has this total amount here at the bottom, and I just designate how much money is going to each sinking fund in my own budget sheet. A lot of people like to do a purpose with an end date and a end goal. For me, most of my sinking fund categories are super flux, or they won't really go anywhere. For example, I always drive a car, so I'll always need car maintenance. But the thing about it is, before budgeting, when it was time for me to get an oil change or I had an unexpected car emergency, I would have to pull out of my emergency fund. Now I don't have to do this because I have a designated $240 set aside specifically for anything related to my car. Same thing for travel. We'll talk a bit about this later in other videos, but I love a flight deal, and most flight deals are last minute. I have $1,500 saved to be able to be ready to go at the drop of a dime. Oh, Italy for $240? Sis is ready. I have the money saved. I'm also saving up for a new cell phone. House toiletries is another one that is constantly being ebbed and flowed. You'll see it's about $46, and when we started this pay period, it was $16, and that was because I ran out of bleach, toilet bowl cleaner. I had to get paper towels and toilet tissue. So this is the category that kind of gets those things. And then these are the ones, these three categories here are the ones that really get me excited. My birthday, Christmas, and Black Friday are all within the same time frame, and oftentimes either within the same pay period or either they're back to back. And before budgeting, the end of the year would always hit me the hardest. This is when I would kind of go into those unhealthy financial practices of using credit cards and not being able to pay off the balance, or just kind of spending beyond my means. Now, with my sinking funds, this isn't something that I have to worry about. On my birthday, however much money that I have saved is how much money I have to spend to celebrate. Christmas is the same thing. Again, I don't have a designated goal of how much money to save. It's just when Christmas gets here, or when it's time to Christmas shop rather, however much money is in my sinking funds is how much I'm spending on gifts. Black Friday is something I always like to partake in, and again, my budget for Black Friday spending will largely depend on how much money is in my sinking funds. We're in June and I'm looking at about $160 right now, so it's looking pretty good. It looks like I'll be having a great birthday, Christmas, and Black Friday. And then I wanted to talk about the home improvement category. This one is another one that kind of ebbs and flows depending on how much I'm into home decor at the moment. If there's a Bath and Body Works sale that I wasn't aware of, this is where I would kind of pull my candle purchases from. And I kind of do the same thing with clothing. I always just have, or like to have, a designated amount of money set aside. I don't really buy clothes often, but when I do buy clothes, your girl goes ham. So I want to be able to do that guilt-free. And so again, my budget for clothing is always what I have saved in my sinking funds. And the same kind of goes for like concerts and being social. How many of us get that last minute text like, girl, do you want to go to this concert, or do you want to go to this day party? I don't have to stress about putting financial strain on myself to hang out with my friends. Again, I have money set aside for this. So the good thing about this and how this kind of helps me stay on track is whatever the balance is on my budget should match my bank account. Now, there are instances where the number will be off. Most likely it's because I haven't accounted for the interest that my savings accounts will accrue. So when, for example, in this last pay period, I got about $1.03 interest. So all I did was just allocate that interest amount randomly to one of my sinking funds. Because of coronavirus, I knew I wasn't really traveling, so I haven't been really feeding this sinking fund, so I just added that amount to there. That pretty much sums up the budget. Let me know in the comments below if you have any questions. Again, this budget is linked down below in the description bar, absolutely free. Like this video if you want to see more finance and budget content, and I'll see you on the internet whenever. Thanks, y'all.